site. For recording in progress, there you go. For the people who weren't able to join us tonight because they're at the pub or out in the sunshine, they will be able to watch this afterwards on our Patreon site, and we'll share the link with everybody.
So shall we invite people to turn off their videos now or in a moment?
Yeah, so I'm going to hand over to Carly now to introduce herself. She's going to share her screen with the mindfulness session, and we're going to turn our videos off because it might be a little bit distracting in a moment. So feel free to do the same if you want to, but if you don't want to, I mean.
But are you all comfortable with the tech setup so far?
Any questions, please do either pop them in the comments box or turn your mic on.
All right, fab. In which case,
yes, you can hear
let's get on with it.
Great, lovely. Well, thank you so much. Thanks, Kate and Gwen. I'm Carly from Limina Collective. I work with my colleague Lucia Vaderdrift. And we're going to this is a bit of a taster session, really. So we work in museums and galleries. We also work online. And we are investigating this overlap between mindfulness and art. So we were really delighted to be invited on to write up my podcast. This theme of just wellness and how we can feel better. This is really the area that we're working in, and it might seem an obvious sort of overlap, well-being and looking at art, or being in a museum and looking at art and looking at art and wellness. And it's an area of research that's growing and growing, thinking about the museum space as a space for wellness. And so the work that we're doing is really about how we can bring mindfulness practices and approaches to the act of looking, of the art of looking, and how that can help us to feel greater connection with an artwork and also with ourselves. And then looking at that those wider well-being benefits as well. So the last time I saw at least half of write up my podcast, so Kate was at the National Gallery, and that was part of the podcast episode, and I'll say a bit more about our sessions there. But just thinking about the gallery space as a space for wellness, where we might go to feel better. And at the end of this short session, we might have a chance to unpack that a little bit more, sort of the evidence-based understanding of why that might be, of what's actually happening when we're looking at art, particularly with mindfulness in a gallery setting. So then we were invited to deliver a sort of a mini session for you, and we were really delighted when we were working online a lot more in the time of the pandemic, that we found that people really did still get so much out of looking at art on a screen. And so that's something else to experiment with, that we don't have to physically be in a museum to do this. It's something that's always accessible to us, and you could always call up an image, an artwork on a screen and follow mindfulness based approaches to sustain that looking and to encourage that connection, and to stay curious about what it's like to be looking and to be ourselves sort of right now looking. And art will very naturally bring us into the present moment. It encourages us to be with our senses, and it sparks our curiosity. So we thought we would do a little bit of an experiment with a painting that we are all no doubt really familiar with, and that is the Mona Lisa. So we thought we would choose something that we presumably all feel we have some sense of knowing already. And so it might be that you're interested in that idea of what's the difference between what we think we know and what we're actually experiencing for ourselves in this moment through the senses, trusting our eyes. So we're going to sort of try a different way of looking, as if for the first time, so looking with fresh eyes. And I thought we'd start that experiment with a very short prompt. And if you have a piece of paper or anything, back of an envelope or anything to write with, or if you want to, you can also, if you have nothing, you can always type it into the chat. But just for 60 seconds, I'm showing you here, of course, the Louvre, when we've sort of imagined ourselves going to Paris. We're in Paris, we're visiting the Louvre, no queues. We can go straight in, and there's the room where the Mona Lisa usually hangs. And you're looking at the Mona Lisa. So either in the next 60 seconds, I would suggest, see what it's like to draw, even in like a sort of diagram of what you know of the Mona Lisa, what it looks like. Or you could write some words. It could just be 3 words or whatever comes. I'm going to start a timer now. So it's a bit of a sort of a brain dump. We're just putting down on paper the words that come to you when you think of the Mona Lisa or bring it to mind. So I will stop talking so you can do that. And there's no right or wrong here. It's whatever comes. So just have about another 15 seconds or so. So just words that you associate with the Mona Lisa. It could be memories, could be personal memories or art historical context. And then we're just winding up the last couple of seconds. Perhaps you have a little diagram or drawing on your page. Whatever you have, will stop writing or drawing, or if you've noted it some other way, put that to one side. And we're going to sort of physically and metaphorically put it to one side. So part of this approach of mindful looking at art with mindfulness, is to, as best as we can, see what it's like to put to one side what we think we know, what we feel we ought to know, that sort of busyness of the mind, all that wonderful working of the mind that we do that our brain has evolved to do, and making connections and all that good stuff. So let's see if we just put that to one side and come into our looking. And to do that, we're going to prepare for that by having a bit of a mindful pause. So just for 2 or 3 minutes, I'm going to lead you through just a very brief practice. So we're coming into a couple of minutes of mindfulness, and then I will put the image on the screen, and I'm going to lead you through about 8 or 10 minutes of looking with mindfulness. I'm going to guide your looking, and then we'll have a bit of a time to reflect on that. And at the very end, I will say a little bit about the art history. So our sort of inquisitive mind will be hopefully a bit more sort of satisfied with any questions that are coming up. There is a time for that at the end, so you can sort of let your mind know that. So if you're happy to do so, we're just going to come in just to acknowledge our inner experience, just how things are right now. We often don't have time to do that or remember to do that through the day. And especially when we are on Zoom and we're connecting, we're sort of facing this screen in front of us. So yes, to reduce our visual busyness, turning our cameras off if you can, so you just feel like you're coming into your own space. And feeling your seat on the floor and your seat on the chair and your feet on the floor, just having a bit of a wiggle so you come into a sense of equilibrium and balance in your chair, however you are seated. Take a little look around, just noticing the room that you're in, taking note, maybe where the light is coming in or where the light source is, the space that you're in, the height of the ceiling, and then coming back to your own body. And if you feel comfortable right now to close your eyes, this can be a good time to do that for just a couple of minutes. So we could close the eyes or otherwise lower the gaze just away from the screen. And just noticing any sensations in the body. So checking in. Perhaps a sense of coolness or warmth on the skin. Any areas of tightness or ease in the body. Just letting these be as they are. Noticing any sounds around you, perhaps outside or inside. And taking note of the presence of thoughts in the mind. Mind might be quite busy from having arrived here, or perhaps there's just a steady drip of thoughts coming through the mind. So we're just allowing those to arrive, stick around for a while, and then move through. Any emotions here? And then very gently sending your awareness out to the edges of your body. So you're taking in the whole of your body here, having a sense of the whole body sitting on this seat, the feet on the floor, the space of the room around you. And gently letting the light of the room back into your awareness, so slowly opening the eyes or raising the gaze, taking in the light and the colors of the space that you find yourself in, and coming back to the screen in front of you. If it feels good to take a fuller breath and release that breath, let the body fall back on the out breath. And we're coming to this image on the screen in front of us, this image of a painting on a wall in a gallery space. We can go a little bit closer. So we're here with this painting by Leonardo da Vinci. So just to give ourselves this brief introduction, this brief headline news. It's known as the portrait of Lisa Gherardini, or otherwise known as the Mona Lisa. It was made at the beginning of the 16th century, and it's 77 by 53 centimeters. It's painted on a piece of wood. So let's go a little bit closer to this painting. We can just rest the eyes on the image in front of you. Connect back in with our feet on the floor, perhaps have a sense of uplift through the body. So we are just coming into alignment and resting the eyes on the image. And inviting you to send your attention to the very back of the image, so into the background, towards the light. Let's start in the upper part of the painting behind this figure, so acknowledging this figure in this space of the painting and heading into the background to the lightest area, perhaps taking in the colors and the light of the sky, the yellows and blues that are here, greens perhaps, noticing a horizon line on the right of the painting, and then taking in that light of the sun, golden colors, and allow your eyes to follow that light as it moves across the landscape. So we're coming slowly closer towards us, across the landscape, over rocks perhaps, over hills, fields, mountainous areas, water, and slowly moving through blues to greens and oranges, coming to browns and red colors. If you find your mind is pulled away from your looking, gently bring it back to looking at the colors in this area of the painting, of the landscape. Let's go a little bit closer to this area. Perhaps noticing on the left of the painting a winding road, and on the right a winding river and a bridge across it. Taking in these lines in the landscape. And then as our eyes move down the painting, coming to that ledge or that horizontal line across the picture, the edge of a parapet or a balcony perhaps. So we have a sense of our vantage point, of our viewpoint, looking out across the land and coming back to the whole of the painting again. Let's enter the space in the lower half of the picture. So sensing that space between the wall or the parapet and where we are, perhaps. Having a sense of this space where a figure is seated on a chair. You might just be able to make out the arm of a chair, a curved back chair with the arm of the chair supported by uprights. And a body within that space, the volumes of the body, the chest and torso of the body turned slightly to the left, our left, and the arms wrapping around the body. Let's go a little bit closer. Having a sense here of a point of contact where the arms meet the chair and the hands meet each other. Having a sense of the light and shade falling on those hands, the length of the fingers and the spaces between the fingers. Fingers wrapped around the edge of the arm of the chair. Fingers stretched out, touching cloth or fabric. You might, for a moment, want to bring your attention back to your own body, just having a sense of your own hands, wherever they might be placed. Perhaps they're touching fabric or touching each other. And then let's go back to the painting. So we're sending the attention back to the screen in front of you, placing your gaze on those hands, those crisscrossed hands. And then let's broaden the gaze and looking at the fall of light on the fabric and folds of clothing here. So perhaps taking your attention to the touches of light, where light is reflected on the shine of fabric, and perhaps zigzag shapes, and more delicate fabric, perhaps semi-transparent veils of fabric where light appears to pass through, and details of gathering, touches of light and shade from the rise and fall of fabric. Becoming aware of layers of fabric, one on top of the other, fabric twisted and wrapped around the volumes of this figure, up and over the shoulder. Let's go back to the whole image again. So following that fabric up and over the head, you might have a sense of a veil of fabric across the forehead. Taking a moment to look with focus at just one area of this clothing, perhaps one material that draws your attention. It could be in a shadowy area or an area of light. Perhaps noticing the edges of fabric, the line across the chest, or diagonal lines, the line at a wrist perhaps, and following the contour around this figure, over the shoulder, up and over the head and back down the other shoulder. So we can trace this line with our eyes, just taking in shape and the direction of line. And now let's come to that face. Scanning this face from the upper edge, take your attention up to the hairline, the line of the veil on the forehead, and then slowly scanning the face down over the temples, eyebrows, down the length of the nose, the shape of the eyes, the colors and planes of the cheeks, the shapes and lines under the nose and in the lips, the chin, and coming down to the neck. And having a sense of the whole face here. So holding all of the features in this oval of the shape of the face. Perhaps having a feeling for how you read the expression here. The mood of the expression. This face from another time, another place. And you might like to bring your attention back for a moment to your own body, to your own face. Feeling your own face as if from the inside. You'd have a sense of the sensations of your own forehead or cheeks, lips. And then coming back to the face in front of you. And expanding your awareness outwards to the whole of the painting. So we're gathering up the elements that are here. The face and the shape of the hair around the face and the veil, the fabric on the body, the volumes of the torso and the arms, the touch of the chair, the parapet or wall and the landscape in the distance over the hills and off across the water up to the sky. And seeing if we can hold this whole image in a gentle, relaxed gaze for another couple of cycles of the breath. And then letting go of this image, coming back to your own body, having a sense of your body on the seat, the space around the screen, space in the room around you, perhaps touching back in with the light and colors in the room around you. I'm going to come away from this image for a moment. And coming back, transitioning slowly to the screen in front of you, where we see other faces, other names, other types of information. It's always a bit of a shift, a transition from looking in that way back to another kind of space, another kind of social space. Just let you navigate that for a moment. And we have a few minutes if you would be willing to, if you would like to share anything that you observed during that time, if there's anything that you noticed, or perhaps you might like to start by picking up your pen or pencil and your piece of paper again, and just a similar sort of prompt to the one we did at the beginning. So just half a minute or so, or a minute, to draw or to write down 3 words or more that come to you now as you reflect on the time spent looking at this painting together. So we'll just have just half a minute or so of reflection. If you have your piece of paper again, just noting down words that now come to you that you associate with your looking. You might find that no words come, or you might find that many words come. Could be something that you want to try a little bit later on. But for now, I'd be really curious to hear how that was for you. If anybody would like to either switch their video back on if you feel comfortable, or if you'd like to type something into the chat, perhaps, if you have some words that came up, either from, perhaps there might be something that you noticed that was different from the first words you wrote, or what came up afterwards, or just any observations that you noticed as you were experiencing that, looking in a slightly different way. Hello.
Hi, Wendy. I thought she looked younger than I was imagining. And also I was quite amazed by the landscape behind. I really didn't know that that was all there. And so that amazed me, really. And she looked younger than I thought she was going to look, than she was, you know. So, yeah. But I think it was the landscape that amazed me more than anything, because I just never thought of all that behind her.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you. So just that greater awareness of landscape in a painting that we might think that we know, and then also perhaps meeting that person and reading a sense of age or something a bit different from them that we might expect. Yeah. Anybody else?
That's exactly what I wrote. I wrote wonder, and I remember when I did this one of your pre-recorded ones online, and when you just stop and look, I just feel such wonder at what the artist has done. Like when we were looking at the shadows and the light on the curve, on the creases of the fabric, it's just incredible. And yeah, the same as you, Wendy, I just felt surprised. I'd never noticed the landscape. I'd never noticed that there's water and a bridge, and I'd never noticed she was wearing a veil. And it's one of the most iconic images, and I've seen it so many times. But yeah, amazing when you actually look at something.
Such a different, we sort of, yes, we do, it's so similar to how we go about so much of our lives, isn't it? That we are so often on autopilot with things that we think we know, jumping from one thing to the next. And so just having a chance to really look and trust our eyes and see what's there.
I felt quite mesmerized by her hands, actually, because so much attention when historically looking at that painting has always been on the face, the expression, you know, what's she thinking? But actually spending that time looking at her hands, it felt so intimate and something so kind of real and human about just the way her hands were sat on her lap. It made me feel like a real kind of human connection with her in a way.
They're so beautifully observed, aren't they, those hands? It feels like it could be anybody's hands at any time. Yeah, so that sort of connection between all of us.
I really found myself putting my hands in the same position as her. Just
So
kind
did
of
I.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's really lovely, isn't it? That kind of like, yeah, physical response. Anyone else have anything they would like to, you have any words that came up? It could just be individual words or anything else you might like to share. There's no
life size.
Life size.
She became life size and real and invited us into her space.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, I find the more I look at it, that the sense of space, it feels quite palpable, doesn't it? The sort of volume of just her world that she's sitting in, kind of thing, as we all are. She really sort of seems to have that sense of of presence, perhaps greater presence.
And weren't you saying on our interview Carly, like what is the average length that we actually look at a piece of art in a gallery? I never spend that long looking at one.
Under 30 seconds, yeah, it's like 20
Right.
something seconds. And I find it really, because that might be, you know, as we're the average as we're going through a museum and we sort of dip in and out of works on the wall. And then I think why I was interested in choosing something like this, the Mona Lisa, that's so iconic and so well known, there's sometimes sort of, it's almost sounds contradictory, but we almost look at it less, or we see it less because we see it so much. And so that ability to just really be curious, like, oh, what's here? I've never seen this before. What's that like? What's she wearing? How's the light falling? Our brains are so well programmed to say, oh, yeah, I know that, move on.
Yeah.
Or to construct it out of information or received knowledge, rather than sitting back and being with, you know, resting in what's really true for us. And it could be different if you looked at it, well, it would be different if you looked at it tomorrow, or if your, you know, mood was different, or, you know, you had a different kind of day, the painting the response would be different. So I think that's also really fascinating to observe as well, a painting that we can come back to again and again. We're seeing the painting, but we're also seeing a bit of ourselves in that. Leonardo da Vinci actually described the act of looking as being like two mirrors facing each other, that there was this sort of conversation that we are mirroring back to the object is mirroring to us. So the object sees us, we see it, or we sort of send ourselves out to it. And I think it's really, I find it sort of, it's possible to sense that with art. It feels like it's a two-way conversation sometimes.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of minutes to sort of say something about, if it would be helpful, I could say something about the Mona Lisa. It might be that we feel we already know something about it. But I love the fact that we sort of know her as one name, but she's sort of got this nickname. And so I just for the last couple of minutes, just to introduce her as if we are meeting her for the first time. So this is as much as we can be certain, this is what we know of her. Her name is Lisa Gherardini, and she was the wife of, and it's always interesting, isn't it, when women are described as, the identity comes from being the wife of Francesco del Giocondo. And so we are in Florence, we are probably in 1503, and they are a couple that have done very well for themselves in Florence. Francesco is a silk merchant. They have, in this year, they're moving home to a gorgeous new residence, and Lisa is having their third child. So that's probably the occasion for commissioning the portrait. So there's this moment in their lives that they want to mark, and Leonardo da Vinci is commissioned to make a portrait. And that would be quite a straightforward thing. He's doing something quite unusual in the way that he turns her in three-quarter view, and he allows the landscape to be so integrated, and there's that warmth of light. And so he's using all of his knowledge and understanding that made him such an exceptional painter. But what makes the painting so sort of well known and why it's so captivating is what's unknown about it. So we don't know why Lisa Gherardini, she never received the painting, or it was never installed in her home. It stays with Leonardo da Vinci, and he takes it with him when he moves to France. And so towards the end of his life in 1516, he dies in 1519, so the painting is never delivered, and then he has it with him when he arrives in France to work for the French king. And that is where he then spends the rest of his life. No doubt Francois I, the French king, was delighted to see this portrait as an example of what Leonardo could do. And this is how it then is in France, and why we now see it at the Louvre. So it entered the royal collections that way. So there is a sense of mystery around it, and that mystery is added to because it's written about in the 16th century as being significant and important portrait, that apparently Raphael saw it, and people were sort of, there was a buzz in Florence around this portrait. So there's lots of reasons why we might be sort of drawn to it, but at the same time, there's also a sort of there's an unexpected depth or level of fame So I can just very briefly show you a copy that was made, or a painting that was made around the same time by someone working alongside Leonardo. And so we can assume that this painting, which is now in Madrid, gives us a good idea of what the painting would have originally looked like if it was not so yellowed with varnish. And if we could see the full width of it, you can see there's columns on left and right. So that gives us probably a sense of how it could have looked. And so that adds again to our sort of our awareness and how we might look at it. That is a bit of a sort of a summary, a bit of a context for her. And there's a comment here on the chat about the background and the landscape. And I agree, I think it's extraordinary, isn't it? We are so wired to look at faces that we may not see that background. And for Leonardo, it was so important, that connection between human and nature and the flow of energy in nature and the way that the individual was connected to the universe. He wrote and spoke about this a lot. So for him, the landscape was absolutely sort of a crucial part. The figure was integrated in the landscape and connected through mood and emotion, the movements of the mind. So for him, all of this was all part and parcel of how he understood the world. So hopefully that was a helpful experience, a bit of a taste of what we do, what it can be like to look at a painting in this way. And I know that on your podcast, you sometimes talk about glimmers, and perhaps there were little glimmers for us there, little moments of joy or sense of safety or connection, whatever that is, that can light up our day a little bit. And museums and galleries or looking at art online just allow us perhaps to see some more of those, or to experience some more of those glimmers in our day. So I hope that has lit up your evening a little bit, whether it's sunny or not. And I was going to just briefly say that we're doing we have a couple of events coming up. If you're in London, you can come along, as Kate did, to the National Gallery. There's free events on the 11th of June and the 1st of July. You can see those on the National Gallery website. We're going to be doing a free online event for the Royal Collection in September, if you look out for that. And we're also going to be, we're working on a wellbeing trail for the V&A Museum. So please do look out for us, stay connected, and we also look forward to hearing more about how the podcast evolves.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. And we will share all of those that information as well from the Limina Collective's future events. And likewise the link to the episode that we did with you, if people want to listen to a bit more of the kind of the understanding behind how you've developed these practices and these art mindfulness slow looking sessions.
And we'll also put this session up on our Patreon, won't we, Kate?
Yes.
We'll put it up there for free so everybody can access it.
Definitely. Do it again or share it with your friends. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you so much for everybody for joining us. That's so lovely for you being there for our first workshop. You're all lush.
May there be many more. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening. Mwah.
Thank you all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Hi, Debs, by the way.